Greetings, fellow thinkers and drinkers, and this is my third ranking video, having at least attempted to do ranking videos for the catalogs of Black Sabbath and Deep Purple, and not just that, but try to give them some, rather than just an arbitrary list of 19 to 20, or in the case of Deep Purple, more recordings, to give them some greater meaning. And now, as I said, I'm going to finish this little experiment off by going through the catalogue of Rush. With Deep Purple, it worked out quite well for me, in as much as I was able to delineate largely by lineup, and then subsequently within the lineups I actually like to break it down. Thus, at least it gave it some reference, some context. With Black Sabbath, able to split the catalogue effectively into 5 subgroups, everything from those that have disappointed me through to those that are absolutely essential. With the Rush, it's much more difficult. When you cannot really delineate by lineup, apart from the first album, they had the same lineup for over 40 years. Secondly, they have had a habit of morphing every now and again, changing, adapting new styles, incorporating new styles, changing direction, which makes it's in some ways very difficult to compare albums from various stages of their career. It's not as if I'm going through the Motorhead catalogue, because they're all cut from very similar cloth. That's not necessarily true. Well, it is not true at all of Rush. And people who like their earlier stuff, it's not unknown that they don't like their later stuff. So great has been the change in style. I like it all, which is good for me, good for them, because it meant I bought everything. But for an exercise like this, it does make it slightly tricky. So I was wondering how I was going to do this, trying to avoid the trap of just going from 1 to 20. And, okay, that's my favorite, that's my least favorite, and all the stuff in the middle, it has no meaning. But then it occurred to me that, obliging fellows as they are, they'd actually done this for me. Well, if we look at their recorded output, they had a little habit, not the word I'm looking for, and since I can't remember what the word, I can't recall the word I'm looking for, but they recorded 4 studio albums. They then released a live album, initiated a change in style, recorded 4 albums within that style, progressing obviously within, and blah blah blah. That takes us more or less through their career. Obviously, maybe you don't know, but towards the end of their career, the preponderance of live albums increased. In fact, we got one every tour, but that's just for the last 4 studio albums. But the rest, that was the pattern. That was the word I was looking for. Pattern. That was the pattern that developed. Whether it just developed organically or this was some grand stratagem, I don't suppose we'll ever know. Not that it matters. So, okay. There are 5 groups of 4. Those less mathematically challenged than I will already have realized that makes 20. So 20 studio albums and quite a lot of live albums. But I will just be mentioning them in passing. Purely because up until the late 90s, they were used to punctuate the band's career. And what came in between the live albums effectively has its own distinct era. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of the eras in turn and rank them from, in my opinion, weakest to strongest. For there is nothing in this catalogue I do not like. There is nothing I think is bad. There's nothing I think is subpar as a whole. Some are strong, some records are stronger than others. 1 or 2 have a couple, 2 or 3 weak songs on them, which, yeah, obviously for which they obviously will lose points. And what I'm hoping is that when I've done that for all 5 stages within their career, we'll have one representative album from each stage, and I'm hoping that those, when put together, would be a reasonable package you could give to the uninitiated and say, well, look, if you don't like anything on this, very unlikely you're going to like the rest of the catalog, for I have a fairly representative sample here. Although a couple of my choices may surprise you. A couple of them may just surprise me. Okay, so the first 4 albums. Well, the weakest one is, unfortunately, Something Has to Be, is the debut. The only album they recorded with John Razzi on drums. I like it, but it is just very not unindicative of what was to follow. There's good songs on it, and there are a couple of less than essential songs on it. Working Man is still a band classic, and it's still a great song. I always loved Finding My Way. So it's another one of those albums, and there are a few in my collection that have been really well bookended. 2 really great riffs there. It was raw, it was raucous, not necessarily indicative of what was to come. So I'm afraid Something's got to be at the bottom of the pile, and that is it. By no means a bad album. I still like it, I still enjoy listening to it. Second in this particular grouping would be Caress of Steel. Here they got slightly carried away. Slightly overambitious. It did lay the groundwork for the album that followed it, but yeah, there are a couple of places on there where it loses focus. The first time they tried to have one side of the record, one song, a sweet 20 minutes. Not 100% successful, I have to say. Although I think this has a worse reputation than it actually deserves. There's some really good bits on it, but it's not that cohesive. Also true for the longer track on the first side, the Necromancer. Some really good ideas. You can see the ambition here, and that's to be lauded, absolutely. It's just the execution. Could have been better. In second place, and I really struggled with this, these last 2, more than many may think, but in second place I went with Fly By Night. What a difference a drummer makes from the debut to this. With the exception of Best I Can, there is nothing on here that you could imagine coming from the first album. Not really. They matured very quickly, and Neil Peart was obviously exactly the right guy for the job. Some really, I mean, they even get away with songs with the ridiculous titles of Vitor and the Snow Dog, which, you know, God, really, guys? No, but they get away with it somehow. This is a fantastic follow-up, and this, I suppose, in some ways you could say, was the start of the journey. This does indicate where they will go. I think it's a lot better than maybe some people give it credit for, but the only reason it gets second place is because of 2112. This is where things really clicked. Well, they had to, fortunately, otherwise we may never have heard from them again. But they stuck to their guns despite record company pressure, as we all know. 2112, the first side, another song, 20-minute song. But this time, where on Caress of Steel it worked in parts, in pieces. Here it works as a whole. And the second side of this record is, I think, much underrated, undervalued. Some really strong stuff on there. And some varied stuff as well. Both Lessons and Tears, I think, better songs than perhaps they're given credit for. This wins over Fly By Night purely because it was so important, it was so effective, it was so vital in the story, and ultimately because it was so damn good. So the winner of this group, shall we say, is 2112. They then started the precedent here of releasing a live album, All the World the Stage. It's a very good live album, reflective of the show, largely reflective of the show they played on the 2112 tour. But I may come back to discuss the live albums in more detail another time. I'm just mentioning it here as it is the first comma in the sentence. Can't be a semicolon this early in the sentence, can it? Surely it's a comma. Who cares? It's the first punctuation mark. We then move on to the second phase of their career, the second grouping. And this, I will confess, I will admit, is by far the most difficult to order, to rank. Any one of these could, on any given day, easily be my favorite Rush album, or one of them. There is not a weak song here, there's not a weak moment here. There is absolutely nothing to complain about on any of these four albums. However, I've committed to this, so I have to see it through. So with something of a heavy heart, last place goes to Hemispheres. Why do I say that? Well, it was the third and last time they devoted the entire side of a record to one song. And they went out on a high and with a bang. No two ways about it. This is great. However, I think in hindsight, they've probably taken this as far as they could. I'm glad we didn't get another one, shall we say. Although, since we didn't, we don't know what we may have missed, but I think they've taken that as far as they could. The second side, yes, obviously, the trees and Livilla Strangiato. What can I say? I mean, these are works of art. In second place, it's A Farewell to Kings. I like this. It doesn't have that concept song on it particularly. But every second on it, every cowbell, every glockenspiel, every guitar note, every vocal note is absolutely fantastic. The songwriting is, even from 2112 through to here, there was a huge improvement, signs of maturity from the first album to Fly By Night. But even from something as successful and something that stands up as well today as 2112, you can tell immediately when on A Farewell to Kings that they've matured. They're better songwriters, and they've realized that they have the talent to fulfill their ambition, a gift not given to many. You may have the vision, but if you don't have the talent to realize it, I suspect that can be very frustrating even. But I think when they recorded this, they must have been very happy. In third place, and this may cause a raised eyebrow or two, Moving Pictures. Yeah. There is an element of burnout to this. I mean, this is the one everybody knows, the album everybody knows. This was their most commercially successful one. It took them to the next league, shall we say. After this, they were headlining arenas and never looked back. It's the one that broke them commercially to the wider audience, or as wide an audience as they would ever get. Again, every track's an absolute drop-dead classic. Guess I just heard it too much. Tom Sawyer is the Smoke on the Water, is the Stairway to Heaven. I really need to hear it again? No. But I have never tired of Red Batiata. I have never tired of Limelight. And I have never tired of Vital Signs. I always like that song. The weird one here, but a good one. Which means by default that Permanent Waves takes the honours on this occasion. It was close. Well, it was almost four-way tie, but as I said earlier, I had to do something. Why? I think Permanent Waves perfectly encapsulate the bridge from Caress of Steel through to Hemispheres. It's the missing link to what was to follow. The songs were conciser, shorter, incredibly well written, but there was still something about it. It still had that epic feel to it. Again, dripping with classics. How can you go wrong with The Spirits of Radio, Free Will, Jacob's Ladder, and Natural Science? Not that Entre Nous and Different Strings let the side down at all. They don't. They're just slightly less known because they didn't feature in the live shows at the time. But for me, on balance, it's Permanent Waves, joining 2112 in the upper tier, shall we say. Okay, more punctuation marks here with exit stage left. Now, as well as I think, I've never been that keen on it. Again, I don't want to get too much into the live albums, but they only included material that had not been included on the last live album, and you can look at that as a good thing or a bad thing. You could say, well, they're trying to give us something new, or you could say, well, it would be nice to hear how the band has developed, how the old songs are sounding this far into their career. That is a matter of personal taste. The problem I have with it was the production. It was just too sterile. I've often equated it to Black Sabbath, the original mix of Black Sabbath's Live Evil, for that very reason. It didn't sound like a live album. It lacked atmosphere. But it did herald the next phase of their career, which is probably known colloquially as the keyboard era. A lot of early fans of the band checked out here. A lot of new fans came to the band here, and some of us just carried on going. We appreciated the changes, but didn't see one as inferior or superior to the other. I guess that's just in the DNA, isn't it? Okay. This is actually this was a bit easier to sort out, these four. I think Hold Your Fire is the weakest of the four. Tai Shan and High Water, maybe. I don't know. I think sometimes I think that's better. Sometimes I don't really. But I think this was definitely showing signs that this keyboard-focused experiment was coming to an end. It sounds a bit strained on occasion. Some really strong material on here, especially on the first side. The sort of Lock and Key, maybe. I don't know. I was never that keen on it. Turn the Page is a great song on the second side, but no, the first side is very strong, I think. But again, in hindsight, and which makes us all incredibly insightful. I think it's fair to say that this was not a bad album. Really good stuff on here, but it was the weakest of the four. Next, I would have to say Signals. Couple of things I've got against Signals. One is I don't like the sound of it. It sounds a bit muddy. I said in a previous video when I was dissecting the box sets, the 40th anniversary box sets, comparing them to the Black Sabbath box sets, for example, being the only other box set series I have, and saying that there was no remixes in the Rush re-releases. And Signals, I think, is one of those albums where you could probably you could justify a remix. When you listen to these songs live, or especially see them live, you see that Alex is much more involved in the songs. His contribution is much greater than perhaps you think when listening to it on the record. They'd gone for a keyboard-focused approach, so he wasn't writing huge riffs anymore as much, but he was very busy, and he was adding a lot of color and texture, but he's not well served by the mix. And I'm still not that keen on Digital Man. Countdown, I've grown to love it a little bit more than I used to. For years, I I really thought it was a bit silly, but yeah, I'm learning to appreciate it. Chemistry was also an experiment that I think worked on one day, and listening to it the day after, maybe I'm not sure about. But yeah, you've got Subdivisions, and you've got The Weapon. You know, fantastic songs. Losing It. And my favorite song on the album, The Analog Kid. In second place, then, it would be Grace Under Pressure, the immediate follow-up to Signals. For the first time, they produced an album without Terry Brown, who produced everything thus far. It's a very harsh sounding album. You know, very dry sound to it. But Alex is much more up in the mix, which is a good thing. And there's some very, very strong stuff on here. Not just the obvious stuff, the Distant Early Warnings, the Red Sector A's. I'm thinking more of Between the Wheels. I'm thinking more of The Enemy Within and After Image. Kid Gloves I always liked. Quite commercial for Rush. But Red Lenses always, I always had a slight problem with that. I never really took to that. But no, very strong stuff indeed. Which means that Power Windows takes the honors, takes the laurels on this occasion. To me, this is a perfect album. This is the best album they did in their keyboard phase. All the songs are top notch. All of them really are classics. Yeah, there's a really strong songwriting. Is it Alex is slightly more to the fore here? Not necessarily, gone back to the big riffs, because he hasn't, but the chords he's playing, the textures he's giving to the songs, excellent. But it's just the songwriting. It's also quite well produced. The first album they recorded with Peter Collins, who would do good service for the boys. But no, I mean, it's just the songwriting on this occasion is just top notch. And to me, this is a perfect Rush album, and quite a clear winner of the group. Although, Signals and Grace Under Pressure, maybe I could, on a different day, swap them. But I think this is all, I'm happy with the selection there. In some ways, much easier than the previous era. Okay, now another point of punctuation again. A lot of commas in these sentences, isn't it? Yeah. It's obviously a German sentence and not an English sentence. English sentences tend to stop after a reasonable period of time. German sentences can take on the length of paragraphs. This is a German sentence. A show of hands with the live album on this occasion, featuring almost 100% songs from the last four. The only inclusion that had been featured on the previous live album was Closer to the Heart, but they justified it on this occasion because they'd inserted a jam into the live song. Fair enough. Another very good live album. It's much more atmosphere, I think, than Exit Stage Left, but not quite as raw and immediate as A Show of Hands. We now get to what's maybe viewed by some as one of the weaker phases of the band's career. They'd made a conscious decision that guitar, bass and drums was the soul of the band, and they were going to move more in that direction, which they did slowly. Never precipitous. Our friends here. The weakest of these four albums, in my opinion, is Roll the Bones. The second time they worked with Rupert Hine as a producer sounds better than its predecessor. But I think for the first time since, I don't know, maybe Caress of Steel, there are a couple of really songs I don't think are that strong. You Bet Your Life. Not great, is it? Face Up. Not their best effort. There's a lot of strong stuff on it. The Big Wheel is a for Russia commercial song, but it's a well written one. It's not a bad song at all. Ghost of a Chance, I thought, was also great. I think the reputation is largely based on the opening three. Face Up, my God, what am I talking about? Dreamline, Bravado, and the title track, where they took the brave decision of including a rap section, which has been divisive. The rest of the material, I don't know. I mean, I've grown to really like Heresy, although when I first heard it, the opening lyric, all around the dull grey world from Moscow to Berlin, touched a nerve. But I've grown to appreciate the lyric as I've become older. Really strong stuff here, but I think it's the weakest of the four. In second place, I think it's Test for Echo. Again, similar criticisms, if you like, or similar observations. By now, they'd returned to Peter Collins as the producer, and this sounds wonderful. It really does. Really strong production. And some really strong stuff on it. And this is Russia, so nothing they do is particularly conventional. I guess that's the point. That's why we like them. But I never thought Time and Motion was that good. And Dog Years and Virtuality. Yeah. Maybe not. Not their strongest efforts. So, anyway, to me it comes in second place. Third place, Counterparts. The predecessor to Test for Echo. Marked the return of Peter Collins as a wonderful production. No disrespect to Rupert Hine, but the two albums he did with the band didn't sound great. This is the first time you could say, yes, they're back to, not a metal band, but, this is the heaviest album since, probably since 2112. Or maybe Permanent Wave, but yeah, the guitar is really up front. Guitar, bass, and drums, keyboards are there to add color. And they sound better for it. And everyone's on top form here. Strangely enough, given the fact that it's got a great riff, the one song I've never been keen on is Stick It Out. I don't know why. But the rest of it's superb. Which means that Presto wins on this occasion. Why? It just does. Possibly my favorite Rush album. And that the first time they worked with Rupert Hine, and he achieved a pretty mediocre production, I have to say. It's very thin sounding, very tinny sounding. Lacks all balls, all bottom end. As I said earlier, Signal could do with a remix. Oh, I'd like to hear this remixed. I really would. But again, as with Power Windows, to me this is a perfect album. There's not a weak moment on it. Everything about it, from start to finish. The songs, the playing, the lyrics, the performances. I think, this is just a wonderful record. I have a feeling that might be contentious. The next punctuation mark then being Different Stages, which was recorded on the Test for Echo tour, where for the first time they dispensed with a supporting act and did an Evening with Rush tour. A 3-hour set split in two. Despite Different Stages being a triple CD, it was not a full reflection of the show, unfortunately, but we did get the entire performance of 2112 for the first time ever, since when they were played it back in the day. Even on the 2112 tour, they skipped the Oracle the Dream section. Why? But here it's played in its entirety, and it's great to hear it after so many years. This is good, actually, in terms of production, yes, probably this is the best live album to date. It sounds good, and it's got the live atmosphere to it. It doesn't represent a whole concert. It is something of a composite. And the third disc was part of a show they did in London at the Hammersmith Odeon on the Farewell to Kings tour, which at the time was a delight to have, but now has been completely and utterly been superseded, made superfluous, because the entire show was released on the Farewell to Kings 40th anniversary box set. Okay, again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. It's just a pity then, even more so, that they didn't take this opportunity for different stages to be reflective of the entire Test for Echo show. Because for the first, well, not for the first time, but they alternated different songs in and out of the set and different legs of the tour. Something I would do later on a nightly basis, but normally Rush, once they decided what the set was, that's what you got. But there was some extra material, additional material, if you like, here. And then obviously there was the downtime due to personal issues that befell Neil. And 5 years was at the time the longest break between studio releases, and no guarantee, given what happened, that we would ever have heard from them again. So when they eventually regrouped to start writing again, it was a big sigh of relief. Vapor Trails is no, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. From this point, we do get 4 more studio albums, but after each tour, they released a live album from the tour. So, yeah, they've abandoned their sort of their principle, if you like, of 4 studio albums, live album, then move on. But the world had moved on. Priorities change, I guess. Physical product wasn't selling the way it was when they were, selling 3 or 4 million copies of moving pictures. It just wasn't happening. But of the 4 albums, the weakest one is obviously Feedback, which came out in 2004 to mark their 30th anniversary. It's an album of covers, stuff that got them into music, that they were playing when they first formed bands. Summertime Blues, Crossroads, The Shape of Things. I have to say, it's not very good. Say predictable choices, if you like, but okay. I mean, if that's the songs they like, that's the songs they like. I mean, I don't think it was that well performed or recorded. I have to say, if they were going to do that, I expected them to do it better. But so that's easily the weakest here. Unfortunately, when they went out to tour this for what was their 30th anniversary tour, this was the record they were promoting at the time. And they included 4 songs from this damn thing in the live set, which might have been fun for them, but it robbed us, the fan, of the potential inclusion 4 originals. Alright, so be it. Second place here is Vapor Trails, the comeback album. It's one of those, I've often, at least in my mind, compared it to Deep Purple's Abandon. It's very focused. Not a lot of variety in it. It's a hard listen. And this had the additional disadvantage of not being well produced. It was very processed. The compression wars. Sounds like something from Star Wars, doesn't it? were raging at the time. It's very abrasive on the ear. They subsequently remixed it, which does help a bit. But it became almost an unpleasant listen, and then clocking in at over an hour. There was just something about the way it was recorded. Well, obviously the way the songs were written as well. This is Rush. They never do anything conventionally, but it was almost like one homogeneous song. It took me a while to get to come to grips with it. I mean, the obvious highlights were Ceiling Unlimited, Secret Touch, and How It Is. If for no other reason, How It Is broke up the, it was a little bit of relief to the ear. Since then, yes, there's some really strong stuff on here, but it did take me a while to get into it. So it's still better than Feedback, but yeah. So second place goes to Snakes and Arrows. Maybe when they were recording Vapor Trails, well, I think they've admitted they'd been, away from each other for so long they had to get back into old habits of working together. I think by the time Snakes and Arrows came around, they'd knocked any rough edges off. They'd gone back to using a professional producer. This time, I think, made a difference. It's at least a better recorded album than Vapor Trails. And again, there is some really strong stuff on it. However, with Vapor Trails, you can't help the feeling that coming in at an hour plus, I think, it might have benefited from being pruned. But Far Cry, Working Them Angels, really strong stuff. Faithless, yeah, I mean, superb songs, really. All of which means the laurels on this occasion go to their last album, their farewell, as it turned out, Clockwork Angels. I can't think of any other bands that have gone out on a high like this. Everything through Vapor Trails, through Snakes and Arrows, if there'd been elements of frustration about those records, it all came good here. I'm not here to review the album, each individual album, but this is a fantastic piece of work. I'll put it up there with my favorites of all this stuff. When was it? 2012. I was, okay, 12, 13 years ago. Along with Presto and perhaps Power Windows, Permanent Waves, it's the one I listen to the most. Wow, that's just a fantastic achievement. I don't know if they knew then, well, or if Neil already knew that would be it. But, the stars aligned for them. And as it happened, that was to be the last record they would produce. But oh wow, what a good one! What a good one! Yeah, I still would say I would put The Garden up against anything else I've ever written. Okay, so that leaves us with, I hope that makes some sort of sense, at least. Or perhaps is slightly more informative or interesting than just a arbitrary list. I hope. Anyway, so that gives us 2112, Permanent Waves, Power Windows, Presto, and Clockwork Angels. So those would be my 5 if I was asked to produce a selection for the a novice or the uninitiated. Probably not the choices most people would make. I have to admit that. But this is my list, and these are my choices. Deal with it. But the thing about Rush is you could actually take every album that I said was the weakest in the category and present those 5, and they're still going to be very, very strong. So I think this more than anything is subjective. I think certainly with Deep Purple, is at least the way I look at it, there's a lot more objectivity about it. They've done some stuff that really wish they hadn't. Perhaps less so with Black Sabbath, but certainly with Deep Purple, there's a handful of albums there the world really could do without. But I don't think you can say that with Rush. I think it's an incredible body of work. I know people have their preferences. Hackneyed old line, old Rush good news bad. Bollocks, I say. But each to their own. So that's that. That's Rush for you. That's probably the last. I was going to do 3 ranking videos just to test the water with them. And I probably won't do any more. One, because I'm a man of my word, largely. And secondly, because I'm slowly running out of bands whose catalogue, the entire catalogue, I'd be familiar enough with to do it. The only other bands I could have done it with is Motorhead, but I'm already doing something different with them. I'm not ranking their albums. I'm reviewing them chronologically. I can't think of anybody else I could do it with. No, I can't. So that's that. Well, let me know what you think. So I'm trying to, with this and the Deep Purple and the Black Sabbath one, see if there is actually any real mileage in in trying to do something different with these ranking videos rather than just 1 to 20 list. So if it can be given more context, more relevance, more meaning, even, you will be the judge of that, no doubt. So please let me know what you think. Feel free to comment, to subscribe, to like, to share, and all those other good things. I said it doesn't hurt. Doesn't result in medication being taken. But at the same time, neither is it tax deductible. But you can't have everything, as I'm sure you know. Oh yeah, we'll be back with something else. Not sure what. Few things lined up. Be a surprise for you. And I think up until the last minute, it'll be a surprise for me. So I thank you for your indulgence. Keep well and mashonkia.